With Nick Spencer's run on Spider-Man drawing to a close, it's been real neat to look back on the wild ride that we've been on, especially just in the last 20 issues. And none of that would be nearly as exciting without the villains who have recently been key players in the series thus far. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. Today we'll be taking stock and checking in with some of the current Spidey villains to pop up in the last few years, who have dominated in some way in the comics or on screen, as we count down the top 10 most powerful Spider-Man villains 2021 edition. Let's get into it. Number 10. White Rabbit. White Rabbit is Lorena Dodson, and while she might seem like kind of a joke villain, we've seen some pretty dark storylines featuring her in the past few years. White Rabbit is out currently to prove that she's one of the baddest bads around and earn acclaim and recognition for her misdeeds. In the Absolute Carnage one-shot symbiote Spider-Man, we get to see White Rabbit featured in a much darker tale when she runs into a judge who at one point came into contact with the Venom symbiote. She ends up getting on his bad side, and in order to get back at him for what she believes was an unfair trial, she comes after him and his son, confronting them with a gun. It turns out the weapon is a joke gun which shoots out a little flag that says "bang", but the shock of the whole event triggers a heart attack in the judge's son, Dan, who dies as a result, because he's kinda got a weak heart. White Rabbit is arrested but escapes at her trial, being busted out by a large mech-like rabbit. She torments the judge as she leaves, who attempts to break into the courtroom to kill her, but accidentally shoots an innocent court stenographer instead. Lorena might have shown remorse here, but the fact that she messed with this man's life so intensely, and then later was absolved of guilt by him killing an innocent man, shows just how twisted and cold she can really be. Plus, she has all the money and all that tech to torment her foes with, so there's also that. Is White Rabbit like the Batman of villains in Marvel? That's the question. Number 9. Sin Eater. Sin Eater has definitely been an up-and-comer in the Spider-Man comics lately. He was in league with newish villain Kindred and was working to eradicate sin out in the world. Kindred was actually the one to bring Sin Eater back to life after he died previously in the comics, being a villain who actually goes all the way back to the 80s in terms of his first appearance. First appearing in Peter Parker The Spectacular Spider-Man issue 107. After being resurrected by Kindred, Sin Eater, aka Stanley Carter, could absorb the powers of the villains whose sins he cleansed, making him immensely powerful. However, despite being crazy capable in terms of what he could do and his power set, Carter was defeated with logic when he was made to question his own actions and his philosophies, learning that he himself had been manipulated. As a result, he took himself out of the picture, taking his own life. Still, Sin Eater has died and returned before, and it could very well happen again in the future. Which honestly, I feel like I'd like, because I feel like Sin Eater, he was really cool. Now he's gone. Sad. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving the Spider-Man comics as much as we are loving the Spider-Man comics, and you're also excited for what's coming after, I know I am, be sure to show that by giving this video a thumbs up. We're gonna have so much Spider-Man soon, it's gonna be crazy. I'm so here for it. Number 8. Scorpion. Scorpion not only has made an appearance on the big screen, but is currently running with the Savage Six in the comics. Scorpion is Matt Gargan, a villain who in recent years had been painted as pretty terrifying. Remember during Dark Reign when he was Norman Osborn's Spider-Man, running around wearing the Venom symbiote and eating people? Yeah, that was the thing that happened. Matt Gargan has proven multiple times how intimidating and strong he can be, and he still remains someone to be feared even as he returns to his more classic look, power set, and mantle. Number 7. Mr. Negative. Mr. Negative is back, baby! Initially, he was cleansed of all his sins by Sin Eater, as his Martin Lee persona wanted to be fully free of Mr. Negative, his darker or negative half. However, after Sin Eater's cleansings were undone, Mr. Negative returned and attempted to take over Martin Lee once more. After calling on the inner demons who threatened to harm Aunt May in Lee's presence, he surrendered himself and became Mr. Negative once again. Kingpin, it seems, has allied himself with Mr. Negative and has also returned his former territories of NYC to him to rule over. Number 6. Mysterio. Mysterio is a villain who recently got a boost when he made his way to the big screen, played by Jake Gyllenhaal. There he was Quentin Beck, a man who used to work for Tony Stark creating tech, but after being humiliated by him, he set out to rewrite his story and make himself a hero. To do this, however, he would need to face some pretty big monsters and would need access to some pretty massive amounts of tech to pull off the illusion of him doing so. He tricked Peter Parker and ultimately Talos and his partner, who were disguised as Nick Nick Fury and Maria Hill respectively, and were actually working for the real Fury, and ended up gaining access to a network of Stark drones and satellites the world over, which Tony Stark had bequeathed control of to Peter Parker originally after his death. Even after he was defeated in Far From Home, Mysterio still managed to come out on top in the end when he somehow, from beyond the grave, leaked Spider-Man's true identity to the world. I really don't believe he's dead. And also made Spider-Man look like a complete villain who had killed the heroic Mysterio. In the comics, Mysterio seemingly perishes only to return once more, claiming to be actually good this time, but of course, it's Mysterio, so he can never really be trusted, can he? And if you want to check out that whole thing, you should go check out Sinister War issue number 1. Number 5. Vulture. The Vulture is another villain who also got a pretty big boost from making his way to the big screen in the first Spider-Man MCU film, Homecoming. In this movie, he's played by Michael Keaton, who absolutely delivered when it came to his version of Adrian Toomes, a down-on-his-luck salvage company owner who, after losing a major contract, is forced to turn to a life of crime to provide for his family. I actually really loved this version of Vulture. It was so good. Vulture then maybe gets a little carried away with that whole side hustle, becoming, you guessed it, a supervillain. Not only is Adrian still out there in the world and still a great threat to Peter as he actually knows his secret identity, but it's also been implied in the Morbius trailers that he might have found his way out of prison. In the comics, Vulture is currently leading the Savage Six, one of the multiple Sinister Six teams headed Spider-Man's way. Or at least in Spider-Man's vicinity. All these Sinister Sixes have their own motives, but they're all going to be at least fighting around Spider-Man, I think. Spider-Man's definitely going to be there and be like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. Number 4. Norman Osborn. Green Goblin, Red Goblin, Goblin King, or just Norman Osborn. Whatever name he's going by at the time, Norman Osborn still remains one of the most powerful Spider-Man villains that we've ever seen. Remember when he threatened not just Peter Parker, but pretty much all the heroes and civilians of Earth during Dark Reign when he became the head of a new organization he'd created to replace S.H.I.E.L.D., Hammer? Not to mention, he also became the Iron Patriot, aka the Iron Man stand-in of his own Dark Avengers team. Of course, lately he's been taking a bit of a back seat as he's more focused on working to help his son Harry Osborn, who is currently taking over the reins in Spider-Man as one of the main big bads currently. Well, kind of. It's complicated. Still, you can't deny the years of history between Norman and Peter and how much Norman Osborn has tried to drive Spider-Man insane. And so for that fact, we still gotta put him, I think, pretty high up on the list, because you can't erase that history. Number 3. Lizard. Lizard is back to shed levels of scary currently in the comics as we gear up for Sinister War. In order to get the villain back on the Sinister Six team, he had his reptile half separated completely from Kurt Connors, meaning that he's full animal instincts and is out for blood. Definitely a deadly loose cannon you want to keep your eyes on, especially considering in the past, it's usually been Doc Connors' presence within that beast that has allowed Spider-Man to defeat the villain, usually finding a way to appeal to his humanity. But with his humanity stripped away, Lizard is being set up to become more deadly than ever. And I am here for it. It's Lizard's turn, baby. Number 2. Kindred. Kindred for a while was one of the biggest and most mysterious baddies that Spider-Man was up against in his own series. We didn't really know who Kindred was for a long time, or what his deal was, other than he knew Peter very well, and also seemed to bear a long-time grudge against both him and villain Norman Osborn. He also seemed to have a soft spot for Mary Jane. This would all make a lot more sense when Kindred was revealed to be Harry Osborn. As Kindred, Harry is now kind of part demon, and is likely in league with another big bad from hell. Although the other side to that is that Harry is also kind of trapped in a cell, so there's a lot going on here. There's still a lot to unpack with Kindred in terms of the mysteries. Kindred has centipedes that he can use to control others and influence them. He can also manipulate people's dreams, teleport, appears to be invulnerable, and can resurrect the dead. All in all, he's a pretty intimidating villain, with or without the mystery that once surrounded him, and still kinda does surround him. Number 1. Mephisto. Mephisto has proven to be another key player not just in Peter Parker's life as his antagonist, but also just in the Spider-Verse in general. He's also gotten involved in messing with the lives of Miles Morales, Spider-Gwen aka Ghost Spider as we know her now, and even Superior Spider-Man aka Doc Ock. Mephisto, it seems, is going to be coming back with even more surprises for Peter. In Sinister War, we know that Spider-Man will be going up not just against Kindred, but also multiple versions of the Sinister Six, each with their own motives. Perhaps he'll be wresting his marriage from the villain, as that seems to be where we've been headed for a while with this build-up. We're also definitely going to get to see Mephisto face off with Doctor Strange, so there's a lot of cool stuff going on. It's great. Who are some of your favorite Spider-Man villains? Which recent villains to appear do you think have proven the most deadly or powerful recently? Over the last few years, which villain do you think has seen the most growth? Let us know in the comments below. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host Amanda McKnight, reminding you as always to stay nerdy, YouTube.